From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up today on AgDay.
And the food plots are designed for wildlife.
We go on the hunt with Chip Flory to see how the king of game birds lives outdoors on the farm. The financial news isn't all bad in farm country.
And clearly more optimism than last year.
As new questions rise about whether we will soon see a trade deal with China.
It's like riding a roller coaster.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado and the all-new Silverado HD, the strongest, most advanced family of Silverados ever.
I'm Tyne Morgan coming to you from our Kansas City studios. Clinton is on assignment. Well, traders are looking for more information on the status of trade talks with the U.S. and China after they appeared to hit a snag earlier this week. The Wall Street Journal reporting Chinese negotiators are reluctant to commit to the size of purchases of U.S. farm goods in a Phase 1 agreement aimed at ending the trade war. Chinese officials saying a rollback of tariffs should also be part of any deal. A Chinese Commerce Ministry spokesman adding the two sides are discussing this in depth. Now, Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping agreeing last month to resume trade talks aimed at resolving the dispute that has gone on now for more than a year. Speaking to reporters at the White House Wednesday, the president continued to say the talks were progressing.
So our trade agreement with China is moving along very rapidly. We'll see what happens, but it's moving along rapidly. China wants to make a deal, that I can tell you.
President Trump had originally said China had agreed to buy up to $50 billion in U.S. ag once the Phase 1 deal was signed. But despite the controversy, China is still coming to the market. USDA reporting a flash sale of 129,000 metric tons of soybeans to China on Thursday. Farm Journal Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer says it's like riding a roller coaster ride right now.
Just as soon as you're very optimistic, then either Trump or Chinese leader Xi Jinping comes out to throw a fly in the ointment. Until we see them signing that Phase 1 agreement, and then, assuming that happens, and I think it will, then we have to read the document, because that's where you get into all the caveats of Chinese purchases. What are their caveats relative to how long will it take for them to purchase their committed buys? Are there some off-ramps in there relative to prices, availability of supply, et cetera? So a lot remains to be done.
And China appears to be opening its market to another U.S. farm product. It has announced it will lift its ban on imports of poultry meat from the U.S. The plan was announced by China's Commerce Ministry in late October. The announcement this week making it official. U.S. poultry has not had access to the Chinese market since the U.S. bird flu outbreak 5 years ago. However, U.S. poultry still faces stiff tariffs put into place by China. Still, the U.S. trade representative calls it great news for both America's farmers and China's consumers, saying the U.S. will now be able to export more than $1 billion worth of poultry and poultry products each year to China. Well, the latest Kansas City Fed Ag Credit Survey says credit conditions continue to deteriorate in the third quarter. It says despite a slight increase in the price of some commodities in trade aid payments, farm income and loan repayment rates declined at a modest pace. Now, this chart showing income weakening at the fastest pace in Missouri. The blue line is where you see that. Bankers in the district say the decrease was caused by uncertainty about production, trade, and other factors that contributed to price fluctuations. The bankers reporting farmland values, though, remain stable. But one analyst says the news isn't all bad when it comes to the farm country finances.
In talking to those bankers, there was more optimism this year than I had expected, and clearly more optimism than last year.
Kurt Covington of Farmer Mac just finished the American Bankers Association annual meeting this week. He says in talking with ag lenders from across the country, if farmers had the ability to sell some ground, build some liquidity, right-size their balance sheet, they did that. And that's helping paint a stronger financial picture.
Farmers, number one, have reduced their costs. Some of them say they've reduced their input costs by 30%. When you reduce your input costs by 30%, and we continue to hear over and over again at the conference that, you know what, yields were better than we thought that they would be. You stack onto that crop insurance, you stack onto that an MFP payment, and many bankers have said, you know, we have growers that are probably above their break even. We'll clear their operating line and we'll set them up for next year.
Covington told me the strongest balance sheets for 2019 reside in much of the Midwest. He says the area that seems to be struggling the most right now are farmers in South Dakota, mainly due to weather. And an update on those China trade aid payments. You'll remember we told you earlier this week several Senate Democratic minority members had sent a letter to USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue saying the president's $16 billion trade aid package for farmers picked winners and losers between regions and crops. The group saying 95% of the top payment rates have gone to southern farmers who have been harmed less than other regions. Our Jim Wiesmeyer did a little checking on that. Take a look at this graphic. It's a table with MFP1 and MFP2 so far broken out by state. Of the 25 states, 16 are not southern. And then there's this information from the Global Agricultural Trade System. It shows the impact of trade to China and the loss because of the trade war. You see the South suffering a $6 billion estimated loss, far greater than the Midwest. Well, farmers right now faced with another problem, an early season Arctic blast. The cold can cause livestock stress, especially for animals not acclimated to the cold, just like some people right now. But USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says the severe cold snap in areas that did not get much, if any, snow is also bringing up concerns for the winter wheat crop.
And that's certainly within the range that will, at the very least, burn back growth on the emerging winter wheat plants.
But Rippey says the freeze is not all bad, saying this has allowed fields to freeze solid enough to support machinery. So some of the harvest work that's been delayed for weeks can go on. But still, there are two sugar beet producers that are having trouble due to the frigid temps. The producers affected are Western Sugar Cooperative and United Sugars Corporation. Western Sugar saying, quote, "These are the worst weather conditions we have had as a cooperative," end quote. Well, there is some good news about the temperatures. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman has more in today's crop comments.
Ty and I think everybody's happy that we're going to see a break in that intense cold, that Arctic cold that dominated most of the middle of the country. You can see some 40s and 50s through most of the plain states, and that's going to be spreading eastward as well. Now, as we know, this is something a lot of farmers are doing right now, drying out their crops. Carol Bowers sharing this video with us, taken in Graceville, Minnesota. You can see the steam rolling as the work goes on under the full moon rising between the clouds. A lot of cold and long nights for producers trying to bring the moisture down. And with the propane shortage, it's making the job actually tougher for many. I'll have more on your forecast coming up in just a little while.
Well, coming up, we continue our discussion looking ahead to 2020 by looking at supply and demand. And later, Chip Lorre takes you to the heart of pheasant country, not just to go hunting, but to learn more about the king of game birds. Well, the flash sale of soybeans to China and another sale earlier in the week to an unknown destination. Those are doing little to support futures right now. Here's an update from the CME.
This is Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures, come to you from the floor of the CME here in Chicago with your grain market update. And we've seen corn really struggling after last week's technical breakdown below support. That now becomes resistance, 377 to 380 for that December contract. If the bulls cannot reclaim ground above here, wouldn't be surprised to see them pounce a little bit, take prices a little bit lower towards 366 to 368. Now, we know that there have been pretty big concerns over production, but demand continues to be a thorn in the side for the bull camp. So that's going to be something that we need to see shift, and potentially we get that in tomorrow's export sales number. So that's what we're looking at to wrap up the week. That's what you should be looking at too. This has been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Here now with Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. Brian, I know USDA has kind of tried to start painting the picture for 2020. When you look at demand, when you look at some supply projections, do things look better next year?
No, they don't. And when you look at what they have for their long-term projections, they are assuming that the trend line yield will go up every year, as does trend. They're also assuming that we will see the demand side of the equation go up every year. But what's alarming to me is that using a trend line yield, which looks like they're going to be using a 178.5, they are using a 94.5 million acre planted number. They're going to use their standard 92% harvested, which is what we normally would see in a year not like this year. the carryout next year is going to be substantial, 2.75 billion bushels. And the thing that's scary about that, and although there is no risk premium into the production side, they're also using a demand number that's 730 million bushels more than what's on the balance sheet this year. So the feed residual number over 400 million bushels higher, exports 200 million, ethanol higher. So I think a producer needs to have a proactive mindset towards next year and put themselves ahead of the curve.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, we know demand's not great, worse that we've seen since 2012. Demand doesn't, I mean, it looks in some areas it may get better, but you're saying it's really not going to help the balance sheet.
I think as time goes by, and there are some things I think could improve with demand, and even for this year's crop, when you look at, like you had mentioned, 2012 and 13-14, I think the corn exports right now are right at about where they started for 13-14 in this particular marketing year. We did see things improve. And so I think that could potentially happen. I think if we do have a low quality crop this year, the ethanol efficiency rates will decline. We're going to be using more corn for ethanol to get the same output. I think our feed residual number is probably 300 million bushels too low, but it's going to take a while for that to be worked into the balance sheets.
So there possibly are some more positives, but get that game plan in place and take advantage of what you see?
Absolutely. I think you want to put yourself in a position where when we start making lows next spring like we typically would, where December corn will be down at 365 or so, where we can focus on, all right, hey, let's capture the carry. Let's roll it out to July to get that 30 cents a carry. Let's have some sales on so we don't feel helpless right now, and now we're just waiting for the market to go up just to feel good again.
All right, Brian, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll have much more right here on Ag Day.
To contact Brian Splitt at Ag Market, call 844-4AG-MARKET or visit their website at www.agmarket.net. Join Andrew McRae for Farming the Countryside, a farmer-focused podcast that is all about production agriculture. Farming the Countryside is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and is brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, the world's largest provider of crop inputs and services.
Well, back now with meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, we're starting to see temperatures finally rebound.
Yeah, thanks, Tyne. No doubt. We have seen the worst of the Arctic air through the middle of the country. Now, there's still going to be a batch of it heading through New England, just so you know, over the next couple of days. Drought monitor has improved. You can still see some dry pockets in the southeast, central and south Texas. Hasn't improved much in the southwest. We go back 4 weeks, and you can see there's a lot more orange on the map here from Texas into the southeast, but watch what happens over the past 3 to 4 weeks, and everything's just kind of shrinking up. We've been getting moisture in some of these areas, which is great news. Watch the last change there. Really made a fairly big change, parts of Texas, which is some good news there. High pressure dominating Texas into the middle of the country. Now, this is Arctic air again. Most of this is going to skim through the northern Great Lakes and end up in New England. This is the big feature on the map. In fact, we'll have 2 storm systems off the southeast coast over the next couple of days. First one's moving northeast for a while along this front. Another system coming in out west. As you can see, that one's going to be weakening, but the cold front will eventually start to come into the northern Rockies. Heading into tomorrow morning, another storm system forming off of Florida there, as you can see right along that coastline. Now, a lot of the moisture is going to be offshore, which is good news, but look at the big domes of high pressure from the Great Lakes all the way down into South Texas. Heading through the day tomorrow through the first half of the weekend, you can see that storm system really wrapping up off of Florida. But again, most of the effects are offshore. That may change, though, along the Carolina coastline as we head through the end of the weekend into early next week. That's something we'll have to watch. Precipitation estimates over the past 24 hours, most of it has been in South Georgia, northern Florida. Adding in the next 36 hours, we'll add some more in those areas the way it looks, with a lot of the rainfall offshore. Not too much through the northern tier of states, and some of what does fall is going to be in the form of snow. You can see that will continue to progress through parts of the northern Great Lakes and New England, but a lot of that snow does stay to the north of the U.S. High temperatures this afternoon rebounding into the 50s there in the central plains. Even the 30s are a rebound across most of the Great Lakes. Low temperatures tonight, 20s through the Great Lakes. There's that Arctic air heading into New England, and that will continue to move that way. There's the jet stream. There's that quick shot of Arctic air, another trough coming into the middle of the country. Notice how, though, it's not Arctic air. The Arctic is now cut off, and so we're not going to see a repeat of that anytime real soon, but that trough will continue to move to the east. Interesting system in the southwest as we head through the end of next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Boise, Idaho, first of all. Mild with clouds and some sunshine, high temperature of 57. Vandalia, Illinois, chilly with lots of sunshine, high 42. And finally, New Bern, North Carolina, going to be kind of a rainy day, high of 53.
Well, still ahead, we go pheasant hunting. But it's about much more than just the sport. Chip Flory has an inside look at where these birds live and what they eat ahead in today's Outdoors on the Farm.
AgDay, brought to you by Corvus Corn Herbicide from Bayer. Get an early season win against weeds with Corvus for end of season rewards.
I'm Justin Moore. Welcome to Outdoors on the Farm, brought to you by my friends at Roxor. From muddy trails to dusty work sites to hidden hunting spots, nothing gets you through it like a rugged Roxor. It's a side-by-side unlike any other.
Outdoors on the farm, where I was born, I was raised, and I'll do whatever it takes to stay. Outdoors on the farm.
Jay Gyra, Circle J Ranch out here in Plankinton, South Dakota. Some premier pheasant hunting out here, but it doesn't happen by accident. You got to farm for these pheasants out here. And I'm going to start in a little different spot, Jay. Let's start with the nesting area, because you've got plenty of hens out here. You got to have a place for them to make a clutch.
Right, we try to leave some grass. We got like some CRP grass there, and also like any low sluice spots. This year we've had a lot of rain.
Yeah.
We just filled some of those in. There's been a lot of no plant around, which has kind of helped expand the nesting area, spread the birds out a lot more.
Yeah.
Leave a lot more fence rows, some pasture, like we have the horses, some good nesting there.
Exactly.
And we got a good tree grove, a lot of grass in there, and that's probably our main spot right in there, because there's good protection from predators and other stuff like that.
And the thing that makes Circle J a little different than some places out in this area is that it is a wild bird hunt.
Hup! Well, I think I got bird repellent because they never want to fly at me. Hunt them up, boys. Sometimes we'll put some hens out in the spring, kind of help. But yeah, they get pretty flighty, and you got to kind of sneak around when you're after them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now the food plots. Again, it's the right combination of cover and food that you're trying to get out there in those food plots, right?
Right. And the food plots are designed for wildlife. They're kind of for deer, pheasants, stuff like that. They're like the appetite, they like to eat them better. And we try to give them spaced out, so we don't want them all bunched up. So we'll have a food plot, some grass between another food plot like that.
Yeah, and it's that stripping that creates that edge where those birds love to hang out.
Right, and when we have a group come, we can have a group of 5 or 6 guys, and we got some narrower plots, we got some wider plots, so it's pretty easy to work that way.
Yeah, the final component here when you're farming for pheasants, they got to have water too, don't they?
Yes, and this year there's been plenty of water.
Yeah, that hasn't been an issue
in
2019.
But some years, the guys didn't have water, didn't have pheasants.
Right.
They won't travel more than about a quarter mile if they have protection and cover, nesting, food, and water, and we've definitely got plenty of that this year.
Yeah, and the water, how was the hatch this year with all the rain that you had this spring?
Some rehatch.
Yep.
A lot of those birds are pretty smart. Some flooded out, they just moved to some higher ground. A lot of stuff we got back here never even got mowed.
Yeah.
There was so much water, so they just kind of went to those spots to nest, so that helped.
We're talking with Jay Gyra out at Circle J Ranch in Plankinton, South Dakota. Next week on Outdoors on the Farm, we're going to be talking about diversity of habitat in this flat land of South Dakota. Absolutely. That's next time on Outdoors on the Farm.
Thanks so much, Chip. Well, coming up next, a dog that's turning heads. And it's all because of something a little extra. Details next in the country. Every dog is unique, but one rescue puppy is attracting a lot of attention. Take a look and you'll see why. The nearly 10-week-old puppy named Narwhal has an extra tail growing from his forehead. kind of like a little furry unicorn. Narwhal was rescued over the weekend and sent to Max Mission in Jackson, Missouri. It specializes in fostering animals with special needs. The organization's founder says Narwhal doesn't even notice the extra tail and is otherwise a happy, healthy puppy. And no, before you ask, he cannot wag it. The rescue group says it's been flooded with requests from people wanting to adopt Narwhal since his picture hit social media. But he'll remain at Max Mission for now, so his caretakers can be sure the tail does not grow out of proportion to his face and cause him any problems. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. We're so glad you tuned in. For all of us at AgDay, I'm Ty Morgan. Thanks for watching in Farm Country.